So today's talk is building data and machine learning applications, but it might sound very alien to you. Don't worry, we will go through it. Firstly, about me, I was working as a machine learning engineer for 2 years, and then I was hired by Hugging Face to be a developer advocate. And I also do research on natural language processing myself, like applications like GPT-4 and other things. And today's talk is about a bit about my journey in machine learning and also how you can use powerful tools that will save you a lot of time. So when I was a machine learning engineer, so essentially I started, I was graduated from industrial engineering, which is more of a math and statistics type of background and not about coding. And because of this, I didn't really have so many software development skills. I learned them along the way of building open source and during my machine learning jobs, but I still wasn't able to develop stuff like front-end applications. Like, even if I tried, it wouldn't look good. It was very bad, and I was always working at startups where you would do like multiple persons job, like you would take the data and do an exploratory data analysis, train a model on it. And because of this, they also used to ask me to build demos for the clients. Like, it wouldn't even be deployed, by the way, to production, but it was just to show to clients how the model works. And it's actually a machine learning engineer's job, because like, you need to know what the input it's going to take, what is the output, how it should behave, the parameters and everything, as you are the person that knows how your model works. And I would build stuff completely using Flask, deploy them myself for the client, and it was pretty bad. But today's talk is about how you can avoid this. And for instance, this is an application that converts you into an anime character. This is built in purely Python, and you don't need any back-end or front-end development skills to write this at all. And what is possible? So, again, like, these are not okay. Like, we do not want them as data scientists or machine learning engineers. You might want them as back-end developers, but I don't. And we are going to use Streamlit and Gradio instead. And for instance, this is a Stable Diffusion demo. You might have heard of Stable Diffusion. It's like a powerful image generation model. And this is built purely in Python and nothing else. This UI just takes an image text input and outputs image output. For instance, it is painting of a Lovecraftian monster in pastel colors generated by Stable Diffusion. And anything is practically possible. You can build the machine learning applications, you can build data dashboards, you can build data applications, and even more, like, you can even build the website, technically, if you wanted to. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples, and I will later come to how the Gradio's APIs work. And this is, for instance, a video classifier application. It takes a video as an input and outputs a label and the probability of what's going on inside the video and the GIF of the video if you would like to download it. And then there is, for instance, this, so you probably all know about ChatGPT, but there is like so many open source alternatives that actually work very well. And StableLM is one of them. And for instance, this UI for chatting with StableLM is a chatbot UI, and it's again built completely in Python. And another thing, if you're a data scientist that does stuff like sales prediction or churn prediction or other things, you can also use it. And for instance, it's a defective product prediction application that you can drag and drop a CSV file and it will just parse it, and this is a data frame component, and it outputs another data frame component that shows the results. For instance, these are not defective products. That's why it's saying it's a 0. And the last thing is, for instance, my colleague VB is currently giving another talk in another, I think, Room Mozzarella that you can watch later about Whisper, which is a model built by OpenAI to do speech recognition. And this is a UI built for Whisper, and you can, which shows that you can also do audio-based applications. You can, for instance, record from your microphone or upload an audio file and then transcribe something that you wish. And how does it work? So the high-level API of Gradio is called interface. And interface is essentially taking an input component type, which is text or image or something, and an output component type, which can be anything again, and the function that will work in the background that relates input component to output component. So it can be anything. It can also be a machine learning model. You just initialize the interface with only one line of code, and then once you start the application, you can just pass an input through the UI and get your output. And let's see an example. For instance, this is an application that always classifies things as dogs with 70% probability and 30% as cats, no matter what it is. This is my function, and I have an interface that takes the function, and then the input type, which is an image, and then output type, which is a label. And you initialize the interface, and you call launch on it, and when you run this application file, your application will be up and running. And for instance, this is my cat, and this is classified as, unfortunately, as a dog. And I might further customize it as well. For instance, so as a machine learning engineer, it is sort of your duty to hint the users what they should be inputting, because models are sometimes too specific, they are sometimes too broad, but this one is only classifying cats or dogs. So you would like to tell them, hey, please input a cat or a dog photo. So I pass examples inside as a list of lists, where each list has the image path. And I can pass title and description as well. And then I later pass them to the interface when I'm initializing it. And this is it for customization. Like, for instance, this is my dog, and it is perfectly fine classified as dog. Over there, you will see example inputs, which is my cat and my dog. And then you have the description, which is a simple dummy image classifier. And then you have the title. And if you would like more flexibility, we have another low-level API called blocks. And I will go through how blocks work. But for instance, this application, let me switch again, has like 3 tabs where you can explore the data, train the model, and then see the results in like separate tabs. And then you can stack components on top of each other, and you don't have to stick to any structure. And also, we have like many components that are interactive. For instance, it is natively integrated with the Plotly, Matplotlib, and also other like bokeh-like applications, libraries. And then you also have like canvas, which you can draw the integer and it will be predicted, for instance, which is, I think it's very cool. And the blocks API works like this. So you have, sorry, it's my Siri. So blocks API works as this. So you say with Gradio blocks as demo, And then inside the demo, you write what you would like to have. Like, for instance, I would first like 2 markdowns, which is going to be a header. And then I have the body text. And then you can put tabs. And if you would like components to look together, either in row or column fashion, you can say with gradio.row and define your elements. And there is 2 things. One is because you do not have like a fixed interface that you only press submit, you now have event listeners and buttons, like you can define them. And within the button, you just write what's going to say on the button, and then the click event is going to be train the model is my function here, inputs and outputs. So it just works in the same fashion as the interface. And also you don't even have to have any button as well. When you play with the components, if you define an event listener, as you play with the components, it will change and it will output a new thing every time, which I find very cool. And if you would like to improve your UI with themes, you can also pick community-built themes. These are all built by the Gradio's own community, and there is like fun ones like XKCD or anime stuff. And another cool thing, but I have to talk about Hugging Face a bit. So Hugging Face is sort of the GitHub of machine learning. And there is like many models, like GPT-2 is like one example. In fact, it's an old model now. There is many models that you can find inside the Hugging Face hub. No, I'm not showing it, apparently. Hugging Face hub, and so what's cool about these models is that inside this model repository, there is input and output components defined within a configuration file. And for all of these models, we have Docker images defined, meaning, as you see, there is a widget over here that enables you to try the model right away. It's because everything is very standardized, and this widget understands that this is a GPT-2 model. There is a input component and the back output component, which are both texts, and it just gets up and running. And thanks to this, you can also call these UIs. You can also create these UIs with only 1 line of code with Gradio. And what you do is you do gradio.interface.load, and you give the model repository's ID in Hugging Face, and you define your interface like this, and this is created only with 1 line of code. It's just crazy. Like, for instance, this question answering model takes context and the question as an input, and outputs an answer and the score as an output. And again, this is only created with 1 line of code. And for instance, this library that I developed is called SKOPS, and my colleague Edrin is going to talk about it tomorrow, so please show up there as well. And it has a Gradio integration, which means when you push a scikit-learn model to Hugging Face Hub using SKOPS, you can load this UI with only 1 line of code, because there is a lot of abstractions running in the background that tells what the model does and what it takes as an input and gives as an output. And for deployment, again, we got you covered. You do not have to deal with anything. You do not have to deal with Docker. You do not have to deal with Fast API or whatever. Though they are like very cool tools, and I'm not bashing them, but I would like to save your time. So we have something called spaces, which are essentially, again, repositories. And inside these repositories, there are Gradio and Streamlit applications and other things hosted. And the cool thing is, like, all you need to do is to write your application file, like I said, and like maybe 1 line of code, again, if you are using an integration, and then drag and drop your application file to that repository, and it will be just up and running automatically, nothing else needed. And you can also deploy anything. You do not have to stick with Gradio or Streamlit SDKs, but you can, for instance, this is made with Unity. This is a snowball fight thing built by my colleague. You can build static applications. We also have like pre-built Docker images, which I will come to later. But you do not have to stick to Gradio or Streamlit to host your application for free. This is my cat in Yoda outfit, and again, this is made with Gradio. It's an application called Stable Diffusion in Painting, hosted inside Hugging Face. Another thing is chatting with Gandalf using GPTJ, built by my colleague. And another cool thing, and I'm coming to the end of my talk, is your ability to use blocks and interfaces that are hosted inside Hugging Face as like APIs, which means if you are hosting a model, like a model application inside Spaces, as you come to the end of the space, there is a button called Use via API. And there is an API, you will find an API documentation, which means that you can just simply send a request through anything you want, just use any HTTP request, and send a request to this space, and input an image, and then get the result. And here is the, for instance, API documentation, which tells you which data you should be using. And it's because Gradio is using Fast API in the backend. It's in a Fast API fashion, like if you do, I think it was /show, you can get the API documentation. And lastly, we have Docker templates as well, built with many other open source companies. Like there is one for Shiny, if you are using R, which is a weird thing to say in a Python conference. You can do, like there is many Docker templates for many things you would like to use, and like they will just make your life much easier. And if you would like to get started, you go up there, you will see a profile picture, click new space, and then you get to this landing page, define your space's name, define your SDK, and then create the space, and then just drag and drop your app.py file, and it will be up and running for you. And if you have any questions, I think I can take them. Do I have any time?
Yes, plenty.
Thank you.
Very much, Merve. It was a wonderful collection of tools that really makes our lives easier in a way. And we have a collection of great questions as well here. So first of all, about the connection with the database. Does Gradio have connectors to database directly? Can explore more about that? There's not a particular database mentioned, so feel free to...
So about this, I'm not sure, because I think this is the first time that someone comes up with a question like this. But if you are following me on Twitter, or like if you're in the Discord, feel free to shoot it, and the core developers will answer, or I will just open an issue in the libraries to express that there is this is needed.
Yeah, thank you. And it's great to have a Discord channel just for that. It's being quite busy, quite active, right?
Yeah.
As a personal project or for a company project, what's the coolest Streamlit of Gradio app that you ever made, if you can choose one?
So I cannot be objective about it, but the very funny thing is, like, I built many applications that I consider to be useful. But this application, for some reason, I don't know why, I trained the model on ChatGPT prompts that generates a prompt for ChatGPT for a given persona. And it was the most demanded one by people, and I also built a UI for it, and people really like that for some reason. Maybe it's the hype.
Thank you. And I guess the discussion can go on Discord too.
Yeah.
The second place and third place. And as for the tool that you presented, especially for spaces, is good to use it for just prototypes or also to go to production if there is any connection to production itself?
I mean, if you would like, if you do not want to bother yourself with building a UI, you can deploy this to production. In fact, I would like to show you something which is not here, but so within the launch, there is like multiple parameters you can pass as well. And if you call share equals true, it will automatically create an ng-rock tunnel that you can send the URL to the other person, for instance. And I just wanted to say this: if you would like to not host your application, but rather show it to your client. Also, we enable private spaces as well, so you do not have to serve your application publicly, but you can have a private space, and if you are in an organization, people inside your organization can check out your space. And if you would like to deploy it, just feel free to deploy it. Like, you don't need anything else.
Great, that's a great information to have. I think it's very useful. And about annotation of these different tools, someone mentioned perhaps some experience with Always. What's your view? Is it needed to add more annotation? There is any more feature that works along the line?
What do you mean with annotation here?
I don't know if the person that asked about that can specify.
Yeah,
Yes? Sorry, 1 second.
I think HoloFizz is, for example, adding a lot of annotation features to their ecosystem, and I was wondering if Gradio also supports that.
You mean data annotation?
Yeah, for HoloFizz, like they also have a similar thing. And I was wondering if you also support like annotation features within Gradio.
Okay, I would like to get it right. By means of annotation, do you mean something like labeling?
Yeah, labeling or like
okay,
selecting certain data points or these kind of things.
Because I couldn't understand initially, so
okay. No.
Very cool thing I would like to show is within our Docker templates. There is a company called Argilla that provides annotation UIs, sort of. You can start a Docker template of Argilla that essentially creates sort of like a sandbox for you inside spaces. And then you can create a separate application with Gradio because it's integrated with Argilla. And then you can ask people to annotate from that UI, and the UI and the space that hosts your Docker template, the data sets will arrive there, like the annotated parts will arrive there. So like you can have it all on spaces. And yeah, I think this is currently what we have, like this is a labeling library, sort of, and the company that does labeling, and we have an integration with them inside Gradio. Thank you for the question.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Even more. Do you have any case studies for the customer size of the Hugging Face of this tool, especially for spaces? If the people use it more for private personal project or even for online project that can be visible online, if you have any awareness of the usage of spaces?
I would say, like, if you have like a very fancy demo about something, like you have a creative idea, people who are often creating these public demos are either academicians who would like to showcase their work. Like, for instance, in many famous machine learning conferences nowadays, there is like a tablet that you can try the model with in the poster sessions and other places. Gradio is used there, and also I would say companies would like to use it privately, but like most of the people are using it to showcase their models, or like essentially, like I would say this is like an app store of machine learning where you can find many applications around, for instance, fintech or like biomedical domain or like any other domain. You can just pick up a POC and showcase it to your company I think it's very cool because then you can also use it in your startup pitches, for instance.
Yeah, I don't know if there are any other questions. I will ask a question as well.
Yeah.
Do you think people that start using it in their own company needs to have a sort of pitch in order to use a different kind of technology? Because sometimes there is a legacy technology is challenging to bring new project with the new technology, and if you have any tips on that.
Can you rephrase
yes.
it? Yeah.
So basically, as many companies have legacy code and sometimes are a little bit relentless in change it to new technology. If you have any idea on how to make the piece to, perhaps there is, watching this, this video, this recording as well, but if you have a way to pitch the company to make a case to use more of these amazing tools.
I would say like every tool you introduce to your code base introduces more complexity, but this is sort of like a unit code, I would say, that you use in specific cases and you do not need to integrate this into your code base. So I think it's a bit of a separate thing when you just have this. Yeah, thank you.
I think it's a great argument. Okay, if you want to add something else at the end?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. So a big applause for Merve.
Thank you.